Greetings and welcome to the Family Drug Court Learning Academy 2015 webinar series. My name is Russ Bermejo and I'm a Senior Program Associate here at Children and Family Futures, based here in sunny California in Orange County. I believe we're expecting 90-degree weather here today. And on behalf of our team here at CFF and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Program, who supports our work with FDCs nationwide, I want to say thank you for joining us today as we kick off our first webinar of 2015. We've again named our series for this year Leading Change, and we believe it's an exciting time to be part of the FDC movement as we mature as a field. We're gaining more knowledge and skills to forge ahead towards systems change, and this, of course, takes leadership at all levels. So those are the kind of things that we want to continue to explore this year in our webinar series. And as the field has matured, so has the Learning Academy. And it's hard to believe that we're entering our 6th year here. And to date, we've presented over 35 webinar presentations, over 65 hours of content, and have drawn over 2,500 total attendees, representing 49 states, including Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. So I want to again thank you for your interest and support. We hope that these webinars have been helpful in some manner as you serve children and families in your community. Today we're going to be exploring the idea of design and what that means to you as a Family Drug Court team. And aside from myself, we're excited to have Suzanne Muir from Jefferson County, Alabama, Family Drug Court, and my colleague Alexis Balke from Children and Family Futures as our presenters today. Together we hope to address these 3 learning objectives. First, we want to help you gain an understanding of default thinking and a design approach when thinking about planning or redesigning your Family Drug Court program. We also want to explore the type of governance structure and leadership that it takes to carry out design. And then we want to hear from the Family Drug Court program of Jefferson County, Alabama, and how they are serving its target population community. I want to remind you that if you have a question or comment that you'd like to ask our presenters during the webinar, please feel free to use the question box, which should be towards the bottom part of your control panel, usually located on the right-hand side of your screen. Please enter that. We have someone monitoring those questions, and we'll pose those at the end of the webinar. But we're also trying to do a few things differently this year. Today our webinar is actually scheduled for 60 minutes. We're trying to shorten our presentations from 90 minutes like we've done in the past to 60 minutes, knowing that there is a considerable time commitment attending these webinars during your workday. But we also want to offer opportunities for more in-depth discussion with our presenters and possibly with each other if that's your need or desire. So we're offering a post-webinar conference call immediately after the conclusion of the webinar. So we're going to post the same exact slide with this call-in information at the very end, so you can, no need to write down the numbers, you'll have this handy at the end of the webinar. So we want to start off with our one and only polling question today. So we wanted to kind of just gauge where you are at in terms of your Family Drug Court. What stage of development is your Family Drug Court currently in? So are you either at the planning or design stage? So you're thinking about launching a Family Drug Court in your community? Are you the early implementation? So you started and you're just right now just in the early implementation stages. Or have you been around for a while and now you're trying to enhance or expand your program to reach a certain target population or a certain part of the child welfare population in your community by adding on trauma services or services to children or enhanced services to parents? Or are you institutionalized, meaning are you a permanent fixture in your jurisdiction after securing permanent funding and a new way of doing business? Or are you uncertain? Please take a few moments to enter your response to those questions. And according to the results, over 40% of you are in the enhancement or expansion stage, whereas a quarter are uncertain. So that's helpful for us as we're going through the webinar. And again, we want to thank you for joining us today. So I'm going to take a few moments to talk about default and the status quo. What do we mean by default? Well, the simple definition tells us that it's to do something by default is to use a predetermined or pre-selected setting or position. So no choice is necessary when you do something by default, and it's basically an approach that involves not having to take any further action. Similarly, when we talk about maintaining status quo, we're referring to the tendency to keep things the way they are. So in other words, business as usual, or this is the way that we've always done it. And although I don't want to get into this idea of status quo bias, just know that it's something that we experience all throughout the day when we're faced with the thousands of decisions as we wake up in the morning until we go to bed at night, all the way from the simple decisions to the complex. So when faced with a complex decision, we all know that we tend to accept the status quo as reflected in the old adage, when in doubt, do nothing. So indeed, across the range of everyday decisions, such as whether to move a house or trade in a car or whether to flip the TV channel, there's a considerable tendency to maintain the status quo and refrain from doing something or doing something different. We want to contrast default or status quo with the design approach. So when we think of design, we're approaching it with high intention, with high purpose, and it's to really give it added or extra thought in terms of planning. And we see this concept of design applied in many areas. I live in Irvine, which is one of the largest master plan communities in the country. So in the world of community development, we know that you wouldn't build out an entire community at once. Instead, you have what's called a master plan, which draws out the phases and zones which are constructed in a thoughtful manner. And this involves, of course, mapping out industrial, residential, recreational, commercial centers, and green belts over the course of oftentimes 5, 10, 15 years. And a thoughtful and strategic planning is necessary to ensure that you have the infrastructure to support growth, yet achieve the desired economic goals and quality of life for its citizens. And of course, we see this in house construction. You wouldn't build a house haphazardly. A blueprint is necessary to see how each part of the house fits within the larger whole. And a blueprint is utilized by different contractors, and the word blueprint is also referred to as a detailed plan of action. And of course, when we think of design, you can't help but think about Apple. So earlier this week, they announced the much-anticipated iWatch, which they proclaim is the most personal product they've ever made, because it's the first one designed to be worn. The Apple Watch represents a new chapter in the relationship with people with technology. So we know that Apple has always been driven to make powerful technology more accessible, more relevant, and personal. And I was kind of struck by an interview with a former designer of Apple, and he kind of shared what the idea of design meant. And we know that Steve Jobs cared much about design as much as the designers themselves. And people often observe that Steve Jobs brought the structure to Apple. But the reason that the structure worked wasn't because it was a top-down mandate, but because it was an all-around mandate. Everyone cared and everyone thought as a designer. So for Apple, having a well-designed product was much more than just the interface. It's what Steve Jobs called the holistic thing, that everything mattered. So the designing of the right business model, designing the right marketing and copy, designing the right distribution, and designing a responsive customer service model. All these pieces were critical, and probably explains why we're just so drawn and enamored by the products that Apple puts out every year. So the question is, design for what? What are the end goals when you're taking a design approach for your family drug court? I want to offer at least 4 end goals here. So design to meet the identified needs of the community. Scope. So to what extent are you meeting the comprehensive, multiple, and complex needs of families? These would include the needs for trauma services, mental health, domestic violence, employment, support. Designed to also serve a larger portion of the child welfare population, which would mean scale. So to what extent is your family drug court responding to children and families in the child welfare caseload? We know that most FDCs currently serve only 5 to 10% of the total child welfare population. So designed to actually serve a greater proportion of the child welfare population that are affected by parental substance use. The FDC should also be designed to achieve systems change. So we know that FDCs tend to move through a developmental phase from their basic beginnings to more advanced stages of collaborative efforts. And the difficulties of operating and sustaining an FDC often result in them getting stuck at the project level, unable to move to the high and more important stages of changing the rules and ultimately achieving the desired outcomes for families in a collaborative agencies working together. And then hopefully you're designed to be sustainable. Hopefully your FDC and its services or innovations are built to last beyond a grant cycle or a grant program, moving towards more secured long-term funding, having new ways of doing businesses, and also shaping the next wave of leaders and champions when those people leave. I'm wondering if I missed anything. So if you think that FDCs should be designed for another end goal, if you want to enter those in the chat box, feel free to do so, and we'll take a look at that throughout the webinar. So we wanted to take a look at some of the default or status quo positions that you might be encountering in your family drug court. So I'm listed a few of these. I won't go in depth in every one of them. But one of the common default positions is, who has the time for this? We're just trying to deal with the here and now. Oftentimes, in our work, we're just trying to deal with the current crises or the current situation. But when you take a design approach, it involves visionary leadership that plans out 5, 10, 15 years out. I'm sure you've oftentimes heard the regulations or the policies won't let us do that. But when you take a design approach, barriers are not accepted, that your partners and your collaborative actually share information about barriers and dive into problem-solving mode, barrier-busting mode. And you see barriers not as an obstacle, but targets for change. We oftentimes hear that our drug court was designed to serve 40 clients, so that's all we're going to serve. But a design approach would take on the idea of, are you serving a greater percentage of the child welfare? Do you have an idea of what the market share is or the penetration rate? And this idea I would want to add when it comes to capacity is, are you working with treatment to ensure priority access for child welfare clients? That would involve a design approach. Default thinking actually uses the project or grant proposal as your objectives. But a design approach actually says, you know what, no, we want to achieve better outcomes for our clients. The default position would also say that our referrals are low because parents just aren't ready to enter the family drug court. But a design approach would rethink treatment readiness, and rather than placing the blame on the individual, you would focus on the system's responsibility, particularly as it relates to strategies for engagement and retention. And we oftentimes hear that our referrals are low because child welfare doesn't give us referrals. The design approach would actually ask, well, does CWS actually need your program to achieve its goals? As the TA providers, we often get requests for, we'd like to know what other sites are doing in terms of this MOU or policy and practice. And we know that those documents or those achievements are helpful as you plan or redesign your program. But a design approach would be very careful about how you take material or models from other parts of the country, and the design approach would actually make it your own, making sure that it's responsive and reflects your local context. We selected these programs because they're evidence-based. We're seeing this quite a bit in terms of, this greater awareness of evidence-based practices and programs. But a design approach would really take a closer look about how do these actually fit together. Does it actually meet an identified need in your population? Do our clients actually need this service? And as it relates to leadership, what we often hear is, well, you know what, this is getting difficult, the collaborative isn't stepping in, so fine, I'll do it. Usually this involves either a coordinator or a project director, but a design approach would make sure that planning and execution happens in more than one person or more than one agency. We're looking at distributed leadership. So is your family drug court designed to respond to the policy environment? So that's going to say something real quick here. Social workers were trained to think of clients in the environment, so known as PI, person and environment. Well, I think we can do the same thing with family drug courts, that projects in the environment. So is your family drug court designed to be responsive or to manage itself through the large expansion of behavioral health funding that's on its way? Child welfare trends, the physical environment. Is your family drug court built to last? Or media political spotlights, particularly on the child welfare treatment systems. Having an idea of your policy environment should also inform your design approach. One way to look at design is to view the various decision points that FDCs are faced with, and I'm just going to go through this real quickly. I know this is a lot, but I want to encourage you to visit our library at the Family Drug Court because we've done webinars for each of these decision points. But first, we want to talk about mission. Has your Family Drug Court included judicial officers, attorneys, child welfare folks, substance abuse treatment providers, and other service providers in the community in the development of the mission of your Family Drug Court? Have you guys used a formal values assessment process when negotiating shared principles or values to reflect a consensus on issues related to families that are entering your Family Drug Court? And do you have a process to revisit the mission, goals, and target population on a regular basis? When selecting a model, so for Family Drug Courts, whether you have a parallel model in which you have a separate judge that hears the recovery and child welfare piece, or an integrated model in which you have one judge that hears both recovery and the child welfare case, whatever model you choose, have you considered the benefits and challenges of each model? And do you understand the importance of an integrated information sharing process, regardless of the model you selected? In terms of target population, are you expanding, who do you want to serve in terms of the subpopulation of the child welfare families? Do you want to focus on 0 to 5 children? Do you want to focus particularly on engaging fathers? What level of risk and need do you want to focus on? Perhaps there's no more important question for your Family Drug Court than to really think about target population. We'll spend a few minutes in the next few slides about this. Service array. Does your Family Drug Court collaborate with other agencies to provide the range of services that your families need? Do your partners include mental health, domestic violence, primary health care, child development services? In regards to partnerships, have you developed strategies to recruit broad community participation to address the needs of the families? And then finally, outcomes. Has your Family Drug Court identified shared system outcomes and developed them with your partners? What kind of system changes have been achieved? Does your Family Drug Court have an ongoing plan for evaluation? Does your Family Drug Court continually evaluate outcomes and modify your program based on the results of this evaluation? And what about sustainability? What kind of long-term funding has been secured? What kind of funding has been redirected? What has been saved as a result of your Family Drug Court? And again, I know that that's a lot that I just threw at you, but we've done webinars in each of these decision points. In the next day or two, I'll post this exact slide with the webinars that we've done on each of these decision points. And when you thoughtfully constructed this, what you have is an FDC that's built on a foundation of shared mission and how they will deliver the services and whom they will deliver them to. This foundation is supported by a comprehensive service array to meet the multiple and complex needs of families and collaborative partnerships in the community, all working together to achieve shared outcomes. So how do we do this? How do you take on a design approach? And so I want to present another conceptual framework, and we've called this the 3 M's, basically answering the question of who will you serve, what are their needs, and how will you serve them, and how will you know that of your impact and effectiveness. We can't overemphasize the importance of knowing your target population. So knowing the child welfare population, what are the latest trends? What are you seeing in the community? Who's coming into care? Knowing your Family Drug Court population. So again, what population of child welfare families do you want to serve? What are their needs? What's their identified need for treatment and for other services? And then also knowing your community, much like that slide about PI or project in the environment. What's the landscape of the community? What's going on? What is the network of providers to meet those needs? So part of the 3 M's is mapping out the needs and services. So again, what are the needs of your families? And oftentimes this is done by just talking with families, conducting focus groups, even reading cases, maybe a random selection of cases on what are their identified needs, what are you hearing from actually participant families or prospective clients. But what are also the services in the community? And my colleague Alexis Balke is going to be sharing about a tool that she's used in different Family Drug Court communities, but being able to map out the needs and the services out there to see if they're actually meeting the identified needs or if there are any actual gaps. And then next, you want to match the services to needs. Again, do you have the services to meet the intensity of the needs, the multiple needs of these families? And then your family drug court monitoring the progress. How are families doing as a result of these services? Are their needs being met? Are you achieving the outcomes that you guys have set forth? This is a slide that you might have seen before if you've attended our webinars, but this is really the structure for leading design or leading change. And if you want further assistance or guidance on making sure that you have this structure in place, we'd love to help you with that. But know that the structure for leading change or design happens at multiple or different levels within your jurisdiction. You have the Oversight Committee, which probably exists at the director level, and this is the level where you want your FDC to be part of the agenda. And then, of course, the importance of the Steering Committee, this management level group that meets monthly or bi-weekly, but this is your barrier-busting group. This is your group that oversees the operations of the Family Drug Court and really looks at any kind of barriers that are being reported and problem solves to resolve those barriers. And what we've seen throughout is that when you have an effective drug court, you have active and invested steering committees particularly. And of course you have the community teams or the work group that actually implement the design and execute the changes. Identifying opportunities for change, and I just want to summarize this slide by being problem-focused and data-driven. You can't overemphasize that enough. So being able to identify a specific need or a concern or issue, and knowing that sometimes crises or issues might actually be opportunities for change. It's also monitoring data and actually being able to gather baseline data and using diagnostic tools to clarify the problem statement are going to be important as you are identifying opportunities for change. And then lastly, some guiding questions for leading change. Do your changes support an independence of systems, or is it going to reinforce the siloed nature of many collaboratives? Do your partners see what you can provide, what they need to succeed? So again, being able to have shared outcomes and knowing that what you're doing actually is achieving outcomes of other systems. Do you have a strategy for overcoming the status quo or resistance or default positions? And how will you monitor and measure the impact of change? The whole process of design and change, of course, is going to require good communication and exchange of information. Do you have processes or structure to do that? And then lastly, are changes sustainable? Do you have the partnerships? Do you have the potential funding to sustain your innovations? And actually, this is the last slide. And what I'll say is that not only is there a structure that's necessary to do this, but there's a certain kind of leadership. And so right now, I have colleagues here at TFS that are exploring in actually greater detail the type of leadership qualities or domains that we're finding in family drug court programs that are effective, that are achieving their goals. And we've listed out some of these domains, and chances are you're probably going to see this slide in every one of our webinars this year. But do you have leaders that can think beyond the project and are able to think across systems and be systems focused? Again, do you have leaders that are barrier busters and they don't accept barriers as given but take on an innovative approach? Do you have leaders that are collaborative so they're able to reach out across different systems and organizations and engage leaders and decision makers? We talked a little bit about distributive, and not one agency or person should take on the responsibility, but actually distribute leadership across agencies and across different personnel. The idea of inclusive, that be able to see your service and your project from a client's perspective is important. Are you actually gaining and gathering feedback actually from your clients when designing your FDC? And again, being really strategic about being outcomes. Do you have, again, an evaluation to support your claims of effectiveness? We look forward to actually discussing more about leadership and about systems change throughout this year and our 5 other webinars. So I know that in our agenda we were going to show a video of the Family Drug Court program in Jefferson County, and again, due to technical difficulties, we're unable to do that, but please visit our Family Drug Court blog, and we'll share that address at the end to share that video. And I think what you'll see is just this impressive yet very powerful story of how they emerged and how they are impacting lives in their community. So you have different vantage points of the clients and from the judicial bench and from service providers. And so we're proud to actually present to you Suzanne Muir, the program director, who will be talking about the Jefferson County Family Drug Court experience and how they took on a design approach in their family drug court. And one thing about Suzanne is that her and I had the opportunity to record a podcast last week. So again, visit our webpage, and we'll provide that information at the end of the webinar to view our discussion about leadership and systems change. So Suzanne, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Ross. Thanks. I know it's another step, but if you have a moment, I would like you to watch our video. I think as a tool, for us, it has been probably one of the best investments we made, and we had some foundation money, which we don't always have, and I know that, but it was really well worth the money to tell our story and to tell it easily and portably, and it just really has been wonderful for us. I wanted to start with telling us just a little bit about our jurisdiction, so you can see if it's comparable to yours. We are the largest county in Alabama, so we have the city of Birmingham and 29 other municipalities. We have about 14% of the state's total population, and we have an interesting mix of urban, suburban, and fairly rural communities. A little bit about our child welfare data, again, to see where we compare to you. This is all 2014 data. The number of children that were in out-of-home care was 737. The substantiated cases was 597. Open welfare cases that were new was 468. When you go down one step further, I need to have a disclaimer because our state does not do a very good job right now of tracking the substance involvement of its parents, and I don't think that's terribly uncommon. So for us to get prevalence data, we had to manually track petitions that were coming into court and look at the petitions and see if drug use or drug paraphernalia or drug test results were mentioned in the petition, and that's how this prevalence data was gathered. So I wanted to let everybody know. So about 40% of our folks are substance involved, and last year we served about 40% of that number. And then annually we had 155 removals. So we started 5 years ago, so we're fairly new. I know there's a lot of family drug courts that are much older than us, and if you look at our stage of development, we're in enhancement and expansion now with the majority of you on the call. So we have a parallel model. I work for a public state university, University of Alabama at Birmingham, for the Treatment Alternatives for Safer Communities program. And we administer the majority of the problem-solving courts in this community, and we work with the Department of Human Resources, which is our child welfare department, and family court. Initially, we got a startup grant from the Administrative Office of Courts, very small amount just to kick us off. And after that, we were successful in getting OJJDP funding. And then we have been really, really fortunate to have support from Casey Family Programs, who is doing some wonderful child welfare reform measures in Alabama. And that has been our play money, and they've allowed us to do lots of creative stuff like the video. We have an oversight committee and a leadership team to serve as governance. I want to show you a little bit about our program eligibility, and this is initial. So this is 2009 when we developed this. This has changed, but I wanted to show you, I don't think we were much different where we started. I don't think we were much different from where a lot of people are or a lot of people started out. In fact, we did a polling before we got started, and a lot of these were quite common. But you'll see we're looking for dependence or abuse diagnosis. We originally were looking for people who had lost custody of their kids, so they were court involved. Motivated toward reunification just basically means that they volunteered for the program. We did not want anybody that had a primary Axis 1 diagnosis, any violence or sexual abuse allegations. 18-month program, 4 phases, probably fairly common. We have an interim evaluation that has shown some of our effectiveness. We expect our final evaluation probably in the next month or two. We compared our participants to people that were in the program, or actually not in the program, but in the system prior to us beginning Family Drug Court. And what we found was 17% of non-program children were reunited with their parents compared to 28% of our children. And the number of days from intake to closing of the DHR case declined from 334 to 208. Preliminary estimate of cost savings per child is 1,884, which is really important to child welfare. So, our change. What we decided to do was introduce a pre-filing track. So a second track to our Family Drug Court. Our Family Drug Court staff and our judge have been talking about pre-filing for some time because we are all very passionate about prevention and keeping families together. So for those of you who don't know what pre-filing means, it is when you intervene before the filing of a dependency petition. So the kids remain at home. For us, the parents are lower level drug users. They commit to a 9-month program. And we keep both our tracks, our full Family Drug Court, and then this track, we keep them separate. So we have a separate peer support group, we have separate judicial review, and that's where we began. So why did we even consider this change? Well, we noticed pretty quickly that parents weren't volunteering for our voluntary program, which is no surprise. It's an 18-month program. We looked around the room and realized that Family Drug Court was maybe too high a dose for some of our clients. And then, like I said, we had a desire to integrate prevention into the equation and be more proactive. And then we have an overall desire to really go to scale, and we really want to move there. So we knew we had to do something different. So this was the first strategy that we wanted to take. Russ was talking about default and design positions. In Jefferson County, and again, this is not uncommon, the default position was just not to do anything different. So to stay where we were, not to make any changes. There were a lot of discussions where statements like, but the eligibility criteria state, or we always have. We had a lot of those conversations. The eligibility criteria state that you have to have an out-of-home placement. And what we said in response to that was, well, we created the eligibility criteria in 2009. So I think we can change it, and it might be time to revisit it so we can serve more people. We always have required an extended period of participation. We always have utilized judicial leverage as one of the key components. So, and the response to that, of course, by design is, well, what are our outcomes showing us? What are other jurisdictions doing to get better outcomes? And are we really progressing toward our vision of scale? So this is actually what it felt like in some of our meetings. So you have a beautiful table, you have a beautiful illustration or a flow, but this is what a lot of meetings look like when you have collaboration between systems. Over the years, since we've been in existence for 5 years, we have developed a planning process that pretty much carries us through any kind of new topic or new issue or change that we propose. So this is our planning process of how we move forward with discussion of the pre-filing track. We identify the problem. People are turning us down. Perhaps it's too big a dose. We collected the related data so we could illustrate that. We have learned that you cannot trust your perception. So data is really important for informing your decisions. The next step that I always do is I look for potential solutions implemented by others. We have been in existence for 5 years. There are a lot more mature family drug courts out there that we can learn from and that we have learned from. So I always give Children and Family Futures a call to see who's doing what. This is what we're thinking. How does that sound? And they're a wonderful sounding board. I do those 2 steps before I get in the room with my stakeholders. I have found that I can nip some arguments in the bud if I have answers or if I can provide data or information quickly. It moves the conversation much quicker, and it helps us to be more productive. So after a series of meetings, then we developed a plan of action. These are the guiding data elements, and I think I said earlier that we were serving about 40% of what we project to be substance-involved parents. Another big piece of data, though, is that over a 12-month period, we have 53 people that declined admission. So they came to meet with a family drug court case manager. They sat down. The case manager explains the program to them before they do the full psychosocial assessment. After they explain the program to them, or after they had done the assessment when the person had some more time to think about it, they said, no, I don't think so. This is not for me. So that was 53 people that we lost over a one-year program, or a one-year period. So when we got together with stakeholders and collaborators, so these are some of the questions that we asked. You know, what do we want to accomplish? What barriers may we encounter? We always like to do worst-case scenario, so we like to brainstorm about some solutions before we do implementation, possible solutions to those barriers. What other partners are necessary? We had developed a partner group that was generalized or for our initial family drug court, our larger family drug court. Who's missing that is not at the table? How would the participant flow vary from traditional family drug court? Are we going to have to go through a different referral route? And what other jurisdictions are available for technical assistance? Whether it's phone calls, emails, them sending us information, or going to see them. Our implementation process. So once we identified who was not at the table as far as providers and partners, we decided to take a team of child welfare and family drug court staff and go and make personal visits to those providers. So we made appointments, and we went and sat down. We talked to them about our family drug court. We talked to them about our participants. We talked to them about why we think this works, or why we know this works actually, and how passionate we were about it. We told them about the proposed change and what design we wanted to implement. And we asked them about what they did. You know, do you already serve the clients that we want to serve? What do you offer them? What outcomes could we collect that would be beneficial to you? What is your funding source? You know, is it anything that we can tap into? So we did that and did the route, and we found out that a lot of the folks that we needed to be at the table were already serving our people, and they were very interested in partnering with us. After that, we included them in our oversight group. So they are now have MOUs, meet with us and advise us, and it's been really, that was really one of the fairly easy parts. We made a decision early on to start small and structured. So we started with 4 families, only 4 families. We agreed to draft policies and procedures, but not to formalize them immediately. We knew that once we got started, we were going to have lots of questions. There were going to be lots of things that we needed to tweak, and we didn't want to lock ourselves down with more rules. We also sent a team, including our judge, our family drug court administrator, DHR assistant director, and the head of our DHR legal team, to Sacramento for a site visit. Children and Family Futures helped us identify another pre-filing court that was doing the same thing and had been doing the same thing for quite some time. And we strategically chose these folks to make this trip to California. It was not a cheap trip, and I know lots of people can't do this, but it really, really was valuable. And DHR Legal, I think the pre-filing track was probably the hardest for them to adjust to. It was very much a shift in what we had done in the past, and they needed to see a little bit more to have a comfort level. So that team went to Sacramento and learned quite a bit. And then we continued our discussion throughout our initial implementation. We had lots of informal phone calls, we had lots of lunches, we had lots of formal meetings with the entire stakeholder team. This is our timetable. So we initiated discussion in March. We visited service providers in the summer. We did implementation in October of last year, and then we did the site visit in December. And I think the decision to do the site visit after we had already started, some of it was by chance and availability, but it really, really worked out well because we had already implemented, I think we had better informed questions. We could compare what they were doing to what we were doing and how it looked. And I think it really was a smart move that was not actually probably fully baked. With every change you have barriers, and we had barriers. So we had new team members that we had to bring up to speed. Child welfare, at least in our community, and I imagine it's the same everywhere, is very fragmented into different programs and different divisions. We had received the majority of our referrals from family preservation and foster care. With this new track, we were going to receive the referrals from the investigation unit. So we had to bring those folks to the table and get them up to speed on what family drug court was, what the mission and vision were, why we believed in it, what the evaluation results showed, and so we had to bring them up to scale. We had continued resistance to change. Like I say on the slide, I think there's a gravitational pull to wherever you started, which I think is natural and organic, but cannot be ignored. We had trouble sometimes maintaining focus on the ultimate goal of serving more families. And then we had line staff resistance to the perception of more work. And with that one, I think it's important that you let line staff know why you're making this change and what the purpose of the change is. A lot of times we don't do that until after the change is made. So we tried to communicate as best we could before the change was going to be made to explain to them why. That doesn't always make it better, but it does at least make you feel involved. Because change is more work. It might not have been more steps, but it was more brain power and it was a more emotional change. Barrier busting. So Russ talked about some of these. Judge-facilitated discussion for us was really, really big. I don't think you can underestimate the value of having a judge be your champion. When a judge invites you to a meeting, you go to the meeting. When a judge is speaking, most people are quiet. So that was really, really valuable. Our judge has been involved in this process since planning of our original family drug court. So this is his program. He feels extremely passionate about it. He's really good about including everybody at the table. And when you say everybody, it's people that are critics and people that are on board. We had quarterly meetings to monitor implementation and brainstorm solutions. And then we had lots of just picking up the phone or meeting people for lunch or going over to child welfare or meeting at court informally to talk about, hey, this happened this morning. What do we do about it? Some of the visionary leadership role, I think, was already discussed by Russ, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how important it was in our process. Because you have to have a strong leader to get change made, because it's truly, truly not easy, and it does not happen overnight. So you need someone that's going to be persistent, that sees ahead into the ultimate vision, that sees across the systems. So many of our systems have their own reality, so to get them to leave that on the outskirts for a minute and sit around the table is a big deal. Our judge is a wonderful leader. He also recognizes that he can't do it by himself. So we have other leaders around the table that have different skill sets, so we complement each other. We also have spent years and years and years building trust between stakeholders. That, I think, has been the biggest thing for our family drug court, and one thing that has made some of these changes and these design changes a little bit easier, because even to this day, we have twice-a-year team building retreats for our core team. Initially, we realized that we have lots of different cultures. Sometimes the cultures bump into each other. We had to have conflict norms even. So we had to agree that we had the same vision and we had the same goal, but we might go about it in different ways. But now that we've built that trust and laid that foundation, it really has made things quite a bit easier. And also leadership establishes an environment where change can occur. It's not reactive, it's planned and strategic. So we moved closer to scale, and that was a wonderful benefit. We now have 15 people in the program. We've had 2 parents that have relapsed while in the program. The remainder of them are just pretty much swimming through. Another benefit that we did not anticipate, which has been something that we honestly have tried for years to do, is designate the family drug court as a gatekeeper. So in the past, our drug court staff would go to court and meet with people at shelter care hearings, or they would get referrals directly from family preservation and foster care. With the initiation of the pre-filing court, we're getting referrals directly from the investigation unit. So we have a supervisor at investigation that reads reports. If there's any mention of self-report of drug use, if there's any drug paraphernalia when they did an investigation, any drugs in the room or in the home, positive drug test, she sends it directly to the family drug court. The family drug court sets up an appointment and speaks to them. So it's been a funnel for our pre-filing track, but it also has opened up people that were not appropriate for pre-filing but may need the full family drug court. So that has been a wonderful blessing to the change that we made. And we've also had expanded buy-in for the program. The DHR legal that went to Sacramento he was supportive, but I don't think he really was as passionate as he was until he went to Sacramento. And it might have been Children and Family Futures planning this, or it might have just been chance, but Sacramento is very different from Jefferson County. They might even be on the opposite end of the spectrum. So they allow parents who are using math to retain custody of their kids. In Alabama, marijuana is sketchy. So there was a wide difference in our practice. So going out to see them and seeing what they do and seeing the outcomes that they were achieving made them come back and rethink everything that we were doing in our county and in our state. And it's been wonderful, wonderful to see. You see some of the effects. So this is the number of assessments that we got, or that we conducted. So you can see we go, 12 to 18 a quarter. In the first quarter of 2015 fiscal year is when we started. So we bumped up to 23 assessments. In January and February of just this year, we had 24 assessments in a 2-month period. So it didn't click for a minute, but when it did click, we're seeing a drastic improvement in the number of people that are sent our way. And that's the number of assessments. That's not the number of people that are come and perhaps say no-go, or the number of people that are scheduled that don't come at all. And those are other things that we're tracking that we need to address. So lessons learned. Involve everybody, even the critics, the people that you're not popular with. Bring everybody to the table, allow them to have a voice. Keep talking. If you don't agree, it doesn't matter. You're not going to always agree. Just keep momentum and keep communication open. Initiate movement. We often say, I understand you're hesitant about this. Can we try it and then get back together and look at the data and see if it works? If it doesn't work, we'll just stop doing it. If it does work, then we can celebrate and see how we can build on that. Always use data, always collect data. We have an electronic database that does not collect everything we need. We do Excel tracking, which is basic and primitive, but that's what we've come to. That has been a godsend. Check back frequently to troubleshoot and celebrate. Be flexible. You are not always going to win. You got to pick your battles, and sometimes you have to allow one of the other systems or one of the other stakeholders to get their way, to get some movement. Don't create your own barriers. Many of the rules can be changed. Which ones do we create? Which ones do we not create? Which ones can we have influence to create or to change along the way? And always, always look what other people are doing. We have learned so much from other jurisdictions throughout our entire 5 years of existence. And without that, we would have made a lot of mistakes that we were saved from making. And it's a credit to what everyone's doing throughout the field. Alexis, I think that's it for me.
Great. Thank you so much, Suzanne. That was just wonderful and really brought us through your thought process and changing the design of your program. Thank you for that. So my name is Alexis Balke, and I am the project manager for the National Family Drug Court Training and Technical Assistance Program. There we go, sorry. And Suzanne and I have actually worked together for quite a while. They are not only just an OJJDP grantee, but they're also a peer learning court. And and throughout their model shift, well, I think originally Suzanne reached out to us because they had identified some issues as far as getting to scale and some potential gaps in their family drug court, or opportunities for improvement might be a better way to say that. And so we initially started working together to try to identify that and look at a way that we can create an action plan together to work through those. So the reason why I wanted to share a little bit about the work that we did is that during this webinar, you've heard a lot of information. Russ shared some great information in the front end about the importance of looking at whether you're designing your court by default or that default thinking, and then with Suzanne bringing us through her thought process. And now I know that we're probably sitting back in our chairs thinking, wow, that was a lot of great information, but now what do I do? Where are we at, and what's my next steps? And I want the attendees today to know that you're not alone in this process, and that there's a lot of resources out there that can help you and guide you through this. And as Suzanne mentioned in her last lesson learned of investigate what others are doing. So the National Family Drug Court TTA program, you can look. I mean, we're pretty much like a clearinghouse of other family drug court operations and things that we have noticed work throughout the nation for family drug courts, and then those that maybe didn't work so well, and lessons learned from those. We've worked with over 300 family drug courts at this time, and we all know that there's approximately about 350 total approximations. So, looking at those numbers, you can see that we've worked with at some capacity with the majority. In fact, looking at the attendees on this webinar, I recognize many of your names. So I'm looking forward to debriefing with you about how you felt this webinar went. So getting back to how we helped with Jefferson County specifically, we started off with her contacting us, asking for some assistance, and of course the first initial call was assessment of what are the needs, what are your goals, where are you seeing the gaps are for your program and the operation, and how can we help? Through that, we conducted some virtual meeting facilitations, which is just a fancy way of saying some large conference calls with maybe some visuals, some electronic visuals, possibly to steering committees or oversight committees to show a little bit about what we're seeing across the nation for family drug court best practices, and maybe try to increase some partnership buy-in. And then the virtual walkthrough is really an important piece. And that is, we working with Jefferson County, taking, really understanding their system from the first moment that a parent or a family is introduced into the system, the first moment, the second that a call is made to child welfare, and then what happens from that point on. And then looking at where are we losing parents? So are we losing them at the initial after the initial hearing? What are the engagement strategies? Are we losing them from their referral? They refer to the family drug court, but then they never make it there, and why? Or maybe after the assessment's done, they never actually enroll, and what's the reasoning? So looking at that virtual walkthrough to find out where are we losing clients, and then again, where are there gaps possibly in partnerships, and how can we walk through as if we were a client to see what that system looks like from their eyes. Already mentioned support materials and resources. It's we have for anyone that has worked with us previously, or if you're interested in getting any resources or materials, we have quite the library of sample policies and procedures and MOUs. And I know Russ mentioned, you know, we don't necessarily think that you should just take someone's MOU or policy procedural manual and do a control find, replace their family drug court name with yours. That wouldn't be what we would recommend as far as designing your family drug court. But what you can see is examples of how other courts have worked through some of the development of their protocols. And in fact, taking it a step further, we can actually connect you with some of those courts that, just like Jefferson County, that you may find a particular interest or may have a similar jurisdiction to you to help you develop those program policies or procedures, or at least identify some opportunities for improvement in your program. And again, action plan development. So we take everything we've learned from your program and working with Jefferson County and Suzanne specifically, looking at so where do we go from here? What are our priority next steps? What are the 3 things that we really think are the priority action items that we need to make sure that we're addressing as we go through with ongoing TA? Then we also conducted a site visit with Jefferson County, which I thought was really the pinnacle of our TA relationship, and it gave us the opportunity to meet the steering committee and the advisory committee and do some stakeholder interviews with some of the Department of Health and DHR child welfare leadership out there. And then the other part of the site visit that I wanted to also mention is the ability to connect Jefferson County with Sacramento. And I know she mentioned that Suzanne mentioned that during her section, and just, you know, learning from your peers, looking at who else is doing something similar in their jurisdiction, and how can we go out and see what that looks like. For anyone that is thinking of developing a family drug court or changing their model or making any substantial change in the current function or the way that the model of the family drug court, I highly recommend trying to find out others that are doing something similar and going out and seeing it in action, and then developing that peer relationship and then using them kind of as your mentor. So those are some of the specific technical assistance that we provided to Jefferson County along the way through their journey of this model change, and we continue to work with them on a consistent basis, especially now that they're a peer learning court, and they by no means, just because they're a peer learning court, believe that they're perfect. And I know we have this conversation often, is that they have also continued to identify other opportunities for improvement that we'll continue to help them with. So if you would like to learn any more information about how the TTA, the National Family Drug Court TTA program, can help your court in identifying some opportunities for improvement or assisting with any type of model change or enhancement, please feel free to contact us anytime. We don't charge anything for our services. We're really in this because we're passionate for the work that we do, and we want to help support you become the best court you possibly can. Some other, just briefly, these are some other examples of tools and resources that we can use in helping your family drug court design or redesign your current model. So if you're interested, if you're looking through this list and anything stands out to you that you might be interested in learning a little bit more, I really encourage you to join us after the webinar today on the conference call and ask us some specific questions, possibly on how you can use some of these tools to help redesign your family drug court. And then again, if you're not available for the conference call after this webinar, you can use our contact information and reach out to us anytime, and we would love to help you learn a little bit more about your court and help you either design or redesign your program. Oh, lastly, real quick, I wanted to connect back to some of the what Russ was saying earlier in the opening about really looking at what already exists in your community and mapping out who are those agencies or service providers that are already existing, and who are they treating, and how can we leverage the resources that are already existing with the community. I helped a county develop one of these community asset mapping, and they found it so invaluable because not only were they able to really locate what do we have in the community, but also what are the gaps and what are we missing in the community, but they were also able to learn a lot about some of that key information about each one of the service providers. So things like, do they accept Medicaid, or is there a waiting list, or what is their capacity, what evidence-based practices do they use, and are they collecting outcomes? Because there's so many times that we connect to other services within the community, but we have no idea what their outcomes are, or if it's something that's really going to, is it an agency that we really want to connect with in the first place? We would like to have some type of data sharing capacity or some type of belief that what they're doing is working for our clients. And then lastly, I think another invaluable piece that we learned in doing the community asset mapping is having that comment section at the end that really provides some helpful information. And it could be something as simple as, when you call, ask for Sally. Sally knows the most about our program. Or what is the level of collaboration? Is this a true, just straight referral source? Or is this an agency or a service that attends community meetings with us? Is this an agency that is looking at developing a partnership with us? And we have examples of completed community mapping as well as blank community asset mapping that we would love to share with anyone that's interested. But it's really an important piece as you look at what already exists in the community for, particularly for leveraging other funding, and then also where are the gaps. And that's all I have for you today. I know that we were trying to keep this webinar under 60 minutes, so we're a little bit over our goal for today, but we are having a conference call afterwards that we would love to go ahead and have you join, and you'll find the post-webinar information in the chat box right now. So that's going to have the conference call number. Suzanne and myself and Russ and hopefully some others that will be able to join and have a more casual conversation about how questions you may have about the webinar, either for Suzanne or us, or how we can help you along the way. And then real quickly, do you want to go through a couple of the resources? So our next webinar is going to be on, again, on the leadership and really the leadership qualities of a family drug court coordinator. We're going to have someone from the state and local level present at this webinar to be able to share what are those common pitfalls that we fall into and other opportunities for leadership change. So this webinar will be available or be posted on April 16th. So if you register today, we'll go ahead and make sure that you get that spot. And then again, these are just the upcoming webinars, so save these dates in your calendar. And we are going to try to always have this post-webinar conversation. So if you're only blocking an hour for the webinars, but you want to start participating in those, then maybe block an hour and a half on your calendar. If not, just a reminder that every one of our webinars is recorded and posted usually within a couple days. So if you are unable to attend any of these webinars, you can go ahead and get onto our either our blog or our website and get the recording and all the materials that were used. All right, so with that, we want to thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that we were able to provide you with a little bit more clarity or information about the starting point, or the pathway or the journey of designing or redesigning your family drug court. And we hope that you can take a moment to complete the brief evaluation after this. We do take your feedback very seriously as we continue to try to make our webinars as interactive as possible and just increase the satisfaction for our attendees. And here's the information for the conference line. So we're going to go ahead and log off of this line. We thank you again for joining us, and then we would love to hear from you on our post-webinar conference call.